Hello, hello. We are back with Titty Deep Outdoors podcast. And I am Linz, your co host. And I'm here, obviously, with my other beautiful co host, Sarah. Sarah, say hey.
Hi.
Closet. Tell us about your closet.
My closet has great sound blocking abilities, so I'm literally sitting inside of my closet. I decorated my shelves really cute. I have more hats than shoes, so it's kind of natural that I sit here in my closet.
So you're literally going to come out of the closet later.
Literally.
Literally.
I'm going to go with
Literally.
And we have a really, really exciting episode because we have not had a guest. Sarah, how long? A year?
I think so. I think we are just going to hit a year. I don't even remember who our last one was, to be honest.
Yeah. And that's for a number of reasons we're not going to get into. But when Sarah and I, we both were kind of like, we really want to get back into having guests back on with us because, I mean, let's just face it, like we've got some interesting stuff to talk about, but it kind of gets boring. So whenever we decided to do this, we decided that we wanted to have our first guest. We reached out to the only person we've reached out to, and she accepted. Very excited. And she is with us today, and that is Captain Reanna de la Cruz. See, I said that even fancier. Like I added a little.
Nice.
So we're just gonna dive right in because I know Sarah and I both have just like a shit ton of questions to ask you. So just be ready for the interrogation. But a little backstory, I got to fish with this captain in January, right? It was it was just right after the new year.
Yes. First week of January.
Woke up. I talked Megan into coming over. Sarah could not figure it out. Elizabeth couldn't figure out getting over there. I was at the Rockport house. I was like, let's just make this work. So I think we left the house at 3:30 that morning. We were running late to meet you at the boat ramp, which I know is like strike number one as a client. But yeah, I just remember us pulling into Port Mansfield, like just coming in hot. And Megan's got just all her shit everywhere. She's literally just woke up. And I'm texting because you've already given me proper instructions and like very good detailed directions on how to find where you're sitting and waiting on us. I did not listen to those. I just immediately drove into the parking lot and was like, where's she at? So of course then we had to pee. So I mean, it was a whole thing. So we get on the boat and off we go. And I will say the one thing I remember from that day outside of the trout that I still think about that broke off towards the end. I remember how sick you were. And I remember thinking, this woman she is like a beast because if she feels like this, I can only imagine what it's like to fish with her when she feels like 110%. So I remember thinking, God, I don't know how you push through it because half the day I didn't even realize you felt that bad because you just made it work. And Sarah, she's just like hooking into him left and right. I'm like, Reanna, God. Hold on. You stop making this look so easy. You'd be like, I'm gonna go back to the boat for a minute. I realized I was like, it's because she doesn't feel good. Yeah. I'm like, let me just catch this 28-inch redfish and then I'm gonna go back to the boat. So that's a little backstory. And not only that, but like you fished hard, like we fished a long time. Yeah. And and then you even got the fish clean for us, and then the weather was not super great. We were again, I think, battling probably one of the things that we really actually want to talk to you about is wind. And you just made it work. And I remember the watercolor and the environment was changing like every 10 minutes. It seemed like I'd look down, there'd be sun. I'd look down, there'd be none. And it was just crazy. So with that said, I think we're just going to dive right into these questions. I'm going to let Sarah lead it off since I have already kind of gotten a little bit of info, and got to visit with you on our trip. I know Sarah's kind of chomping at the bit. There she is. I actually had to condense our questions because I had come up with this long list of questions. And then Sarah gets me her questions last night. I'm literally laying in bed and I get all her questions. I'm like, shit, we don't have all day. So, so Sarah, I'll let you go. Like, take it off. Not literally. Please don't take anything off. But I mean, if you want to.
I am getting hot in my closet, so I might have to start taking shit off here in a second. No, I'm kidding. No, but I really I know Lindsay got to fish with you, so I don't know your personality at all. Like, I don't know you. This is my first time even seeing you, this close. It's like, oh my gosh. But so I have a little funny story just to introduce yourself. Sometimes I can't even call you by your actual name because, we're so into social media. I always call you Mama Baffentrout. And what's hilarious is my grandpa, who is going to be 88 years old this July, he's on Instagram because he wants to follow all of our titty deep stuff, all my fishing, stuff I get from him, is how I grew up. But he follows you, I think, or has seen your stuff. I don't know. Maybe we shared something of yours and he's like, oh, he calls me and he's like, have you seen this Mama Baffentrout girl? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, that's Reanna. And so it's hilarious that even he saw you and he calls you Mama Baffentrout because that's your Instagram name. So I was just wanting you to kind of start us off, introduce yourself, and let us know how was Mama Baffentrout born?
It's funny that you say that because I remember when us talking about booking with you, I was like, Sarah, I was like, it's the Mama Baffentrout. So I was like, wait, and Reanna.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I say a couple years, it was 3 years ago. I'd never really been into social media a whole lot. But then of course, when I entered this industry, I realized that it was an asset and you have to keep up with it. And the social media part of this is a job in itself. And so one night I was just sitting here thinking, brainstorming of names for my Instagram. I'm like, I don't want to just use Reanna de la Cruz. I want to have an Instagram name, something that I'm known for, something that sticks, that can go with a brand that I'm trying to develop. And so I thought, well, and of course, I was a young mom at the time. My daughter was probably a year old, and I thought something with mama and then a speckled trout and baffin mixed in there. And so I thought, well, I'm a mom. And then I love speckled trout, big trout. So I thought Mama Baffin Trout. And it just stuck. It stuck. And so that's what I decided to name my Instagram page. Just because, I knew I was primarily going to be out of Baffin Bay. And so, and of course, like I said, I'm a mother. And so it just stuck. And so a lot of folks, I still get it to this day, and oh yeah, you're Mama Baffin Trout, and people call me that. And it's neat really how the social media aspect of this industry is so powerful. It's very influential, and sometimes I don't realize that, prior to whenever I really started focusing on guiding and trying to excel in my career, I never used Instagram. It just wasn't a thing that I was really into. I was really into Facebook, and I had Facebook accounts here and there, and sometimes I would get bored with it and I would just delete my accounts. I'm like, man, this seems like a distraction to me. There's really no need for a social media account. But now that being a guide, that's primarily where I get 90% of my clients from. It's from social media. It's from also word of mouth, but mainly it's from social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. And one of them, another platform that's really beneficial too is LinkedIn, which is more of a professional type site, and of course, it's another avenue for, you know, customers. And so I've learned to balance all of that within the actual guiding and being out on the water. At the end of the day, you know, you're thinking about what should I post, uh, trying to space out those posts too, because sometimes I just want to just put it all out, every picture, and I'm like, no, that's not. I don't want to just blurt it all out, and people are just overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff. You have to kind of space it out, and so sometimes I have a hard time doing that. I'm like, man, I just want to show this big trout right away, you know, and you have to wait. So there's a little bit of patience in with that, and the social, like I said, the social media aspect of what I do is a job in itself. Making those videos, making those content, making, you know, all the photos, putting it together, and choosing a song. That
Yeah.
sometimes I'll spend an hour thinking what song would be good with this post. And probably 75% of the time, people probably don't even have their sound on. They don't even listen to it. But sometimes it adds a little character. It can make it a little bit more interesting. But you know, I whenever I went to college, marketing was my major, and so we studied that a lot, the marketing part of this business, and all that comes into play. You know, how you build a brand, how you present it, how the wording, the everything. I mean, everything. The hashtags, the tags. You tag certain people. Um, it all matters. All the little things matter. Um, and so it's it can oftentimes be time consuming in itself. It takes a little bit of thought, takes a little bit of strategic planning, but for the most
Creativity.
part, yes, creativity, and there's
Mhm.
a target market, you know, for what we do, and you know, it's a certain age bracket, it's a certain kind of person. Of course, mainly the majority of my clients are male. Um, I do get quite a few female clients too, and so you kind of have to fit something in that fits towards everybody, you know, not just one specific person or one specific one specific genre of, you know, whatever it may be. It has to kind of include everybody. And so that oftentimes can be tough. It can really be tough. But it's rewarding in the end. It's a lot of work, but for me, I enjoy it. I enjoy everything about what I do, um, especially at the end of the day when you're on that last wade and you know that it's been windy all day long and you've been just striving for that one bite, and it happens, and it happens for somebody that, you know, planned a long time for that trip, that they've just been anticipating that bite, and all of a sudden it happens, and it's just like all everything that you do, all the planning, all the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears, it all becomes worth it in that moment whenever you witness your client catching and reeling the fish. And I always tell my guys, I'm like, man, you know, I'm fortunate enough to be out here as many days as I am, you know, out of the year. You know, I want y'all to catch the fish. I don't, you know, if I catch one, it's all right. I want you to catch it. And so whenever you witness that, when you get to have them experience the same thrill, the same happiness, the same emotions that flow through you when you hook into a fish, that's the most rewarding part of it for me, is experiencing that.
Well, I would say like exactly what you said, like the whole time you were saying it, especially that part about like you want to like put it all out there, you know, like your content and stuff. I was like laughing because Sarah and I were just having this conversation because Sarah's like, I know, I gotta, but I just wake up and I want to, want to share it. Uh, and it's so funny, like the song choice. I mean, all that you were talking about, I was, because that's what I do full time, and it's like, of course,
Yes.
I do other stuff
Yeah.
too. But I remember thinking, I think I actually told you this on the boat. I remember thinking your song choices on your reels, like I love them because they just they hit with me. I'm obviously older than Sarah. So like some of those rock selections, I'm here for, like the metal band, the hair
Yes.
metal,
Yep.
hair bands. But I remember thinking too, when you were catching a lot in one spot that we were in, I remember thinking she's not phased by this. Like I, what you just said, like you get to do it, all the time. And I remember thinking, this doesn't get her blood pumping. And I know now it's because you would rather have seen us, obviously, especially. How do you feel about people whenever they lose their trout?
It hurts just as much for me as it does for them witnessing it. And and it happens. It's happened so many times. And a lot of times I always tell my guys, it's when you hook to a big trout, that moment you have so much adrenaline that rushes through you, and the emotions are high. Naturally those trout, they want to come up, they feed upwards. And so they naturally want to come up and do this number. They would just want to shake their head. So I don't know if you noticed how low I set my hook. I mean, I keep it low, and that's why I like to be in about just above knee deep water, to where whenever I get bowed up on a trout, I keep her low to gain control over her. And so a lot of the times whenever a client loses a fish, it's because they're high sticking it. Their rod tip is way up. They don't have control of that trout. That trout's coming up and doing all kinds of stuff. And naturally, they open up them gills and they just blow that water through there. And all it takes is for that line to get slack one time and that hook comes out. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it, and it hurts me just as much as it hurts them. I can always see the disappointment and the sadness, the emotions whenever the moment I see that lure just pop right out of their mouth. And that in that moment, uh, there's so many emotions. I mean, I can honestly tell you that those same emotions, that adrenaline rush, that anxiety, that rush, it flows through me every single time I get connected to a big trout. But there's little tiny things that help make that experience a little bit more in your favor, where you have control. And so keeping the rod down, whenever a client connects with one, I always tell them, keep that rod down. Don't ever let that line go slack. Keep the line tight. And if I know a lot of my clients, they know that I keep my drag set super tight. I mean, when I set that hook on that trout, that line is straight, it is tight on them. And it's fun to watch them come up and shake their head and put on a show. But when you've got an upper class trophy trout that's hooked up to the end of your line, you want to maintain control of that as much as possible. And so, like I said, whenever clients lose a big trout, it hurts just as much for them as it does for me just watching it. Um, and it happens. It happens.
Well, and Sarah, I don't know if I've actually even shared this with you, but Reanna was like to my left and Megan was like to my right. And I knew as soon as I knew just within a second that this was not a redfish. Like as soon as I set the hook on that thing, I was like, oh my God. And it was today. Remember, we were in that last spot
Yes.
and the
Yes.
sun had kind of come out just a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd used nuke juice. Yeah, I had nuke
Yeah.
juice on.
Yeah.
And she actually, like, my whole hook, like everything went, like she broke the line off. And so I look back on that, like I thought about that the whole trip home. I drove home. I mean, and not just the drive from Port Mansfield back to Rockport, but from Rockport back to Springtown. And I remember,
Mm-hmm.
and I told you, Sarah, I was like, think that I think she was swimming at me so fast, like afterwards. And I don't know if maybe we had some shell, but it was like in an instant she was gone. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like,
Yep.
and I looked over at Reanna and I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, yeah, my heart was breaking a little bit over here for you. But I remember I had a lot of slack. I couldn't get the slack reeled in fast enough.
Yes.
And
And
so that,
that happens. I can't tell you, that is big trap behavior 101 when they run right at you. And I've seen it several times. As soon as you set that hook, you pull it towards you, and they have a tendency to run in the direction that you pull them. So they'll run at you. I mean, quick, fast, and keeping up with that. Sometimes you keep up with it, they'll come the opposite direction, and once you see that line getting about tight, then you can kind of set the hook the opposite direction. But sometimes it doesn't happen in that way. It doesn't happen in your favor oftentimes. And so it's really easy to get caught up in the what ifs, or it's real easy to do that. And I always tell my guys, look, there's plenty more opportunities. If that one fish came up and gave us the opportunity, maybe another one will. But it's
did. There was
it's
two more that were good that day.
yes, we caught some pretty nice fish that day, and of course it was a little bit cool. And we were all in waders, but we didn't have on several layers. Luckily, we were able to have like one layer of clothing on and not be the Michelin men out there on that day. But the
Except
weather,
Megan, who's on your lead. Remember?
yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
remember that. Yes, yeah, we were targeting some beautiful potholes that day, and I remember seeing a lot of ideal profile size mullet jumping out of those potholes, and of course, I believe we had a northwest.
mhm.
It was straight out of the north, and it kind of shifted later in the day, and that sun came out. And when that sun came out, those potholes just shined beautifully. You could really see them. Um, and of course, we were just deliberately working those potholes and dusting our lures off bottom. Um, and of course, later in the day, that's when most of our bites were. I remember early in the morning we had a pretty steady bite, but later
Mhm.
in the day, it seems like that's when that sun came out. That's when they really activated. Um, and when that sun comes out like that, I favor anything with gold, copper, or red glitter, and just dusting a little John, Little John XL and Golden Brim or Watermelon Red, and those baits there they produce all year round. I mean, that's not just a wintertime bait or a summertime bait. It is a year round bait. And of course, in that structure that we were fishing, the grass scattered sand pockets, um, you could get away, and the water was somewhat chalky. That wind was stirring up the water, but it wasn't absolutely dirty. You could still make out the potholes, and you could still see the bait. So you could get away with throwing somewhat dark to bright, even clear baits. But when it's overcast like that, like it was in the morning, I tend to throw darker colored baits. I just feel like they see a little bit better of a silhouette when the water is murky, the chalky, and then you have the overcast on top of that. And then, of course, later in the day, it seemed like we were throwing clearer baits, a little bit
Mhm.
lighter, not as bold, when they can really see it. When they can really see it like that, I don't like to use chartreuse or a hot pink or just really vibrant colors where they might go, oh, I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know. They can be a little skittish. And so, you know, going into the lure selection, and why we throw certain lures, why I throw, a certain color, a certain profile, or and of course down there in Mansfield, it's a lot different down there compared to here in Baffin. We're essentially matching the hatch, and of course that time of year, um, there was it was primarily mullet driven. We didn't have shrimp. All we had a lot of cold fronts that had blown through, and so that water temperature was pretty cool. And so what happens is all the menhaden, the pinfish, the shrimp, they all move out to deeper water, and so the mullet will stay up. It's usually horse mullet that you see up in there. They're big size mullet. And so that's when the corky bite gets really good. You have those heavier, bigger, bigger profile size mullet in areas that we're fishing that's mid thigh to knee deep. And I'm only 5'3", and I'm vertically challenged, so I like to stay in water that's comfortable for me. Of course, I get taller clients, and I tell them, get over there in that deep end, get out there on that drop off, and then I'll stay up shallow, and they'll be catching small ones, and I'll hook into a big one every once in a while up shallow, and they're like, man, we would have switched places with you. I'm like, well, that's fine, but I prefer being comfortable. And there's a certain depth, there's a certain color, there's a certain look that I look for everywhere I go, everywhere I fish. There's a certain color water, there's a certain structure, there's a certain depth that I target. And the reason why that is because that's where I've produced the majority of good trout bites. And a lot of people ask me, how do you know where to stop? Why here? And that's always one of the big questions that I get. And it's because, well, a lot of it's a gut feeling. Within me, I know that the data has shown in areas like this, similar to this, me or clients have produced fish here in similar structure. So that tells me that, and of course, down there in Port Mansfield, it's not so much here in Baffin, but Mansfield, we fish our eyes. And when I say fish our eyes, it's when I'm running and I'm looking for birds, I'm looking for slicks, I'm looking for just a little bit of bait flipping out of a pothole. It could be something really simple. And I'll shut down, and usually I'll come in real easy and just kind of drift up, another 50 yards and approach an area to where I don't scatter anything off. And so a lot of people, a lot of my clients, they don't really quite understand the why. Why do you stop here? Why do you do what you do? Why this area? And so that's the best way I can answer it, is that, I have produced good bites and good trout in similar looking structure. And so, that's primarily, why I look for that certain look of water. I always call it big trout water. That emerald green, a little bit stained. You can see a little bit of scattered potholes in there. It looks like big trout water. And that's everywhere I go, even here in Baffin, and I'll run 30, 40 minutes just to find it, until I'm happy, and I'll shut her down, and we'll spend all day there. And I always tell my guys, look, I don't move around much, I don't spend all day running in the boat, and if I don't find what I'm looking for, then some people are, it ain't gonna happen today. Well, I'm not seeing what I want to see. No. We get out and we grind. We get out there and we find them. We put our feet in the water. We walk through it. You can't learn by just sitting in the boat and not getting out and learning the structure, and that's, it's tough sometimes, whenever you get into a moment where, you realize, man, it's been 40 minutes since we've gotten a bite. It's been close to an hour where we haven't gotten a bite. And I always tell my guys, look, the type of fishing that we're doing is deliberate. It is chess rather than checkers. It is it's just like when you go hunting for a trophy buck or a trophy guy, you're out there, you're stalking, you're hunting, you're deliberately making each move. That's exactly how it is trophy trout fishing. Every cast is deliberate, and I grew up playing golf. I'm sorry if I'm going on. Am I okay? I keep
No,
going.
you're good. I feel like you're answering all of our questions without us even asking questions. Like, we were going to, how did you grow up? And you're like, I grew up playing golf. We're like, totally did not expect you to say that, Reanna. Did not expect you to say you were a golfer.
Yes.
No, but that's so cool because It's all like coming together now
That's
because
very
I'm
strategic.
listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm listening to you talk about, how you grind and you're very methodical about what you're doing. And I'm like, that's like the freaking golf mentality because y'all are just like programmed that way. But that was going to be my next question was you're obviously like you're talking about this and it's making me like I'm like shit like I want to go get in the water right now because I get that like antsy feeling inside where like my
Yeah,
stomach's like just getting all like oh
I know
and
it. Me
especially
too.
when you were talking about like holding the line tight and I'm just over here like my muscles are like flinching
I
it's
know.
like it's like you would jump into a basketball game on TV or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my question for you was going to be you're so passionate about this obviously like that's clear as day in our first like 30 minutes or whatever it's been that we've been talking so far so at at what point in time so you I heard you say that you went to school for marketing and now I know that you've played golf so where did things line up for you to like to start being a fishing guide how do we go from marketing golf
Well, I know.
to fishing
I will hilarious because
I
I'm
don't
Well,
know I want to know
blown away by this, Sarah. I was like, "Are you shitting? Like what?"
yeah tell the story I'm interested
so I grew up playing golf, and I started playing competitive golf when I was 6. Won my first golf tournament when I was 6 years old. Um, Played junior golf all the way up to through high school, and then of course in the collegiate level. And so if I wasn't on the golf course, I was on a riverbank or a lake. Lakeside. We were in Rockport. We were fishing. If it wasn't golf, it was fishing. And so I grew up pretty much, Southwest Austin. And of course, Lake Travis is north of there. And I grew up fishing for crappie, and we threw nothing but lures. I mean, we were, middle class family. We weren't going to spend any more than what we had to. We just threw lures, which were these little tiny jigs. We'd go to Academy, and I'd pick out, of course, the most colorful one because I was a kid then, and that was just what was most attractive to me. And we had little crappie rods, and we would just fish for crappie, and occasionally we'd hook into a big carp or a big bass, white bass, but mainly it was crappie. And later on, when I was about maybe 5 or 6, that's when we started going on family vacations to Rockport, and we would stay at Goose Island State Park for months out of the year, and so when we weren't fishing, we were playing in competitive golf tournaments. We would play. There's a league called South Texas Pro Golf Association, and they had a junior league, and I would compete in those tournaments, and they would hold them at Rockport Country Club or Victoria Country Club or somewhere in Corpus, and so we would bring the camper to Goose Island State Park, park there for a week or however many days, and then go play in the golf tournament, and later on the day come back and hang out at the camper, and just we'd make a vacation of it. And so, you know, uh, that was my childhood. It was golf or fishing, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. And of course, growing up playing golf, it taught me a lot. Patience is one of the main thing, and then of course strategically making shots, and that's where I've learned to implement the golf mentality, the mentality that I had playing junior competitive golf and even up to the collegiate level into fishing. And a lot of it is very similar in ways. It has helped excel my fishing career. It's helped excel my uh, skill level as far as trout fishing. And so, of course, like I said, play golf all the way up into, high school level. And of course, I was homeschooled. A lot of people don't know this. I was homeschooled until my sophomore year of high school. And so I made a decision. I was like, I went to my parents and said, look, I want to get ready for college. I know it's different. dynamic. I'm homeschooled. I wasn't a hermit or anything. I still have friends. A lot of people are like, man, there's there's always like this kind of thing about homeschoolers, like, oh, they're kind of a little weird or whatnot. They don't have any friends. I had friends. I hung around all my friends that played golf and fished and whatnot. I wasn't a complete loner. But whenever I got to sophomore year of high school, I realized I want to go to, I want to get ready for college. I want to get ready. I want to get used to the classroom setting and prepare myself. And so I told my parents, I said, I want to go to high school. So I was able to get into Westlake in Austin. And so I wanted to play golf for Westlake, which they have one of the best golf teams in Texas, high school teams in Texas. And so I strived for that, was able to get in, played golf there from my sophomore year all the way up to my senior year. And so by the end of my senior year, I had several college offers right there on my table. And I thought, it's hard to choose. And then, of course, Texas A&M University Kingsville offered me a full ride, and I knew it was pretty close to Rockport and it was close to Baffin. I said, done deal. You got me.
Smart choice. Smart
Yep.
choice.
Yeah. And so studied business marketing when I was there. Played some very good rounds of golf while I was there. And of course, fell in love with Baffin during that time. I never fished Baffin much before that. Usually it was Rockport area. And so during my years going to college there, I would come down here and fish, just walk in and wade fish on the banks here, go to the pier. And it was different. Of course, it was a lot different than what I was used to in Rockport. And so uh, came down here and just fell in love with the area. I thought, it was very quiet, and I preferred that. Coming from Austin, it was um, it wasn't so much of a culture shock for me because I preferred it that way. I like the small towns, the quieter towns where you could kind of breathe. You could kind of just like, okay, I can relax. Austin is it's a little too much for me. It's a little too overstimulating for me. So coming down here was was nice, and I realized that there's really not a golf industry here in Kingsville, Corpus Christi. It's a small community of golfers, and it's not as big as it is in Austin, in the Austin area and surrounding areas. So I thought, man, there's got to be another avenue where I can implement, a passion that I have and make a living off of it. And so I realized that down here, hunting and fishing was a pretty big deal. It's life, as you would say down here. It's just how it goes. And golf was not. So, I, I don't play golf much anymore these days. My clubs are collecting dust. But, whenever I settled down here and I had my daughter, it was new to me being a mom and going down that road and that avenue. And I thought, man, I want to do something that makes me happy, where I'm not dreading going into a workspace and working in a cubicle or I just couldn't see myself doing that. Like, I could not foresee that ever happening. I wouldn't be happy doing that. I tried it. Believe me, I tried it. I tried to like it. And when I was working, I had worked for a newspaper company in Kingsville for a little while. I was an account executive. I sold advertising, and we would also sell ads for the publication that we were working on at the time, or the newspaper. Which newspapers is kind of a thing of the past, but in a small town, it's kind of a big deal. And so did that for a while, and at the same time, I was fishing a lot on my own, and gaining seed time, because I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to work towards getting a captain's license. And I knew that that job that I was holding at the current time was only going to hold me back. And so eventually I decided to buy my own boat, and bought the boat before I got my captain's license. I said, I'm going to get this captain's license. I'm going to make it happen. So bought the boat at that time. It was a Shoalwater 2021 Cat, which it's a great boat for, shallow areas. And so bought that, graduated from captain's license school in Aransas Pass, and started guiding. Of course, I think it took about 5 to 6 weeks till I actually got my license in the mail. And that was man, it seemed like forever waiting for that to come in. And once it did, it was just like, gosh, I can't believe it. This is going to happen. This is it. This is the start of something new, something that I've always wanted to do. And before I had bought that boat, the boat that I used to run here in Baffin was a 1990 Haney with a 50 horsepower tiller on it. And it was a little V-hull. And as a matter of fact, it's still sitting outside. It's got a V-hull, and it actually has a tunnel. You could get up shallow in that thing. I can't. It had no center console, no power pole, no GPS.
We need a picture.
I will send it to you. I'll send it to you, because at one point
Maybe we just need to come down there and fish on it.
we'll still catch the heck out of big trout.
You have to interrupt you, because when you said 50, I was like, so does that mean you're not going to run Legends and Lace with it out of Port O'Connor? I just had to throw that in there.
Imagine we show up in that boat.
To get from Port O'Connor to Baffin.
Oh my gosh. Imagine if we showed up in the morning with that boat. Oh.
Hey, I would be down. I would be down. Yeah. I have no shame in my game. No shame.
I know. I've pulled in some big trout in that little boat, so it can happen. As long as it gets us to point A to point B safely, that's all it can. But yeah,
that's right.
I still think back to those days when I ran that boat, and all the time, that I spent on it and learning Baffin. And like I said, it was without all the bells and whistles. It was without GPS and knowing where the rocks are, knowing that you can't go in this area or you have to avoid this area. It was just a very humbling and learning experience that I'm very, very glad that I went through. And so when I bought that Shoalwater, it was like luxury compared to what I had been running. And now, I think back to all those days, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do. And I remember running that little boat thinking how much I enjoyed this, how much I enjoyed getting the boat ready, fueling it up, all the little maintenance things. It was something that I enjoyed doing. It wasn't like, I just dread having to get the boat ready. I just dread having to put the boat in the water or taking it out and running it. No, it was like I cannot wait to do this. And when I realized that in my heart of hearts, I knew that was something that I wanted to do for a living, and that I could do it for a living. It was an avenue that I knew that I could use to make a living and to do something where I'm happy doing. And I'm not, dreading it every day, where I'm waking up dreading going into work. I'm waking up excited about the day and looking forward to it. And so that's why I'm very glad that I decided to step out of the normal workforce of going into an office and wearing, heels and business attire and walking around with a briefcase. That I used to do that. Believe it or not, I used to do that. And I used to think how much I wish I was fishing instead. How much I wish I had clients and I was out on the water, looking for big trout and catching fish and cleaning the boat and cleaning fish. I wish I was doing that instead of sitting in this cubicle and dreading, and just looking at the clock. Okay, is it 5 o'clock yet? Is it 4:30 yet? I'm ready to go home. That's no way to live. And when, and I'm only 28, and at that time I was 25, 24, and I thought, this can't be all there is to life. There's more. I'm not going to live being this young. I'm not going to do something that I'm not happy doing and doing it for the rest. I just can't do it. Life's too short. Life's too short to be unhappy, and life's too short to be doing something that you don't want to do. And so I always tell people, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I love what I do. It's rewarding. It's hard work. I will say it has not been easy. It has not been easy at all. It's been tough. It's been very tough. And I knew it was going to be a sacrifice. It's risky. I mean, it's absolutely risky when you decide to start a business on your own. And of course, being a female in this industry. I mean, I really hate to say the F word, the female. Really and truly, it's a tough industry to be in overall. I don't care if you are a male or a female, it's a tough industry overall. But just because we are female in this industry, it's tough. A lot of people underestimate you. They question you. Oh, are you worthy enough? Do you really know what you're talking about? And at first it can be discouraging if you let it. If you allow it to get to your head, it can be discouraging. But you know what? For me, I've used it as fuel to drive me even further. Okay, you doubt me? Watch me. Just watch. And really and truly, a lot of people have watched, hoping that one day that I would quit, or that something would happen and I would fail. A lot of people in the beginning doubted. I still, and this goes back to recent times. Whenever, like in the Legends, when I was awarded the heavy trout, which is right behind me. When I was awarded that, all the voices came back in my head that said, she'll never make it. She's not going to make it. She won't last. Not going to happen. When I saw that, I cried. When I was handed that, I cried, because I thought about all the doubt that from people, oh, she'll never make it. All right, watch me. You think I'm not good enough? Alrighty, we'll see. We will see. And so it drives me. That drives me, and it's the competitive nature that's within me that just feels that. It just, and that strive, that honestly, that has originated for me in the golfing industry. And when I was playing golf, when I was playing competitive golf as a young kid, up into the collegiate level, certain things would drive me, into performing better, or it would just, it's really hard to explain the feeling that would go through me whenever somebody would, it was just that little occasional little comment that you hear that just almost, it wants to get into your head, and just, like, it's like that little devil on your shoulder. Oh, she's not going to make it, oh, okay. All right. We'll see. We'll see. And over the years, along with hard work and sacrifice and blood, sweat, and tears, literally blood, sweat, and tears, I have driven myself to where I want to be, and not only in fishing but in life. And so there is a balance to all of this too, and of course, as a mom, my 4-year-old daughter, I wanted to be able to do something for a living, and something that I was happy doing, where I could also spend time with her and watch her grow up. Working a 9-to-5 job, 5 days out of the week, wasn't going to cut it for me. and then come home and then be tired all evening long and not, not have any time to spend with her. Not, no, not my cup of tea. Not going to happen. So, that's one thing that I really love about what I do too, is you get to make your own schedule. Oh, somebody comes in, asks you, are you available this day? No, I have something else going on. Let's work on this day instead. You have that freedom. And what I do, it's freeing. You have a sense of freedom with what we do and what I do. It's I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I wouldn't trade it for anything else in the world. And it's like I said, it's rewarding. At the end of the day, it's extremely rewarding. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on.
No, you're not. I'm enjoying every minute of
You
this
see,
because,
I'm just like,
well, I know. If I could only tell you, girl, how many mornings my husband and I wake up and it's the same, what you're saying is like the same conversation every day. Every
Yes.
day. Because, neither of us work in an office, and we love the outdoors too much. When we don't, we work, but we can fluctuate our schedules to where we can
Right.
get away with doing what we love, or else we would be extremely unhappy people.
Yes.
Like extremely unhappy. You gotta, and you're like well beyond your years. I'm like, shit, I'm sitting here 28, and I'm glad that we have you on and that you are saying this out loud, because there's so many that are in their 20s and younger than you that their heads are literally up their ass. They have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and well into their 30s. I mean, I'm 35, and we've had kids. My oldest is 15 now, and it's like, what are people doing if you're not out there
yeah,
living, like getting outdoors?
Right.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, it takes all kinds to make the world go round. But I think what you're saying is just like, yes, girl, yes, just preach it, because there needs to be more like us. Like you said, life is too short. And why are you not out there exploring
Right.
like what God gave us? I mean, you're talking about walking in the water and exploring, looking around, catching fish. Like those are the beauties of the world. I mean, not an office desk, not sitting at a bar drinking all night. Like you can't do that if you're going to get up in the morning and go fishing.
No.
like I literally have a child that is your age, and I'm just gonna put that there. But why I say that is I wish, like, they call me a late onset hunter, right? In like the hunting world. Because I didn't even start doing this until like I was 40. And there's not a week that goes by that I don't say something along the lines of, I wish I had started sooner. I wish I had done this. I wish I'd pulled my head out of my ass and just gotten a little bit of grip. Life threw me some curveballs. You can sit there and use those as an excuse. It's not, it's it's just out of sight, out of mind. And then, but then it's like,
Right.
once you realize like how fleeting time is, you saying those things. I hope somebody takes that and runs with it, if even one person does, because I wish if I had been your age, and I wish at that age I would have said, you know what? And I'm known for dropping the F bombs. So I would have said, you know what? Fuck corporate America. I would have left
Mm-hmm.
my job at AT&T advertising a long time before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have just gone and done something that made me happy, because
Right.
the other side of that is we're also always so focused on making a living and making sure we have these things and our
Right.
kids have all the things and everything is taken care of and our bills are paid. And at the end of the day, your kids really just want you happy too, because if you're not happy, then it trickles down. And
Right.
so I think everybody gets a little bit more focused on the what's in it for me, and I got to do this and I got to accomplish this by the time I'm here, and I got to accomplish this, and that was me, and
Yeah.
I wish I could reverse that. But
Right.
you
You know what makes it though now, like, I mean, it, like you were saying earlier, it's an additional job, but you're taking the time to do it, is the social media, which we didn't have, let's say even
10,
just a decade ago.
10
Uh,
years ago.
the Yeah, and then look what we're doing here now on this podcast. I feel like we've had this conversation before on several podcasts that we've had with guests. If it were not for social media, I wouldn't know who you are. I wouldn't know that you're any good at trout fishing, and I would not know who to book a fishing trip with, So that really helps you a lot in making those
Oh, yeah.
decisions now, because you know in your mind, like, hey, I got this media background. I can do this. I can promote myself. I'm going to
Right.
make this work. That really has helped, a lot in making your
Absolutely.
decision, I'm sure.
I gotta say this because my marketing brain is going haywire right now too, and completely off topic. But girl, you're at like a serious advantage there, because I'm not saying that all the guides out there are old men, but I'm just saying all the guys. No, kidding.
Big
Exclude
majority
with
of them are.
yeah. But with that said, we do know that majority of the time the women tend to have a little bit more of a knack and a interest, and they have more of
More
that creative.
creativity. Mm-hmm.
And so you
Mm-hmm.
have that paired with your age and the fact that you catch big fucking trout. Yeah. I'd run with that all damn day.
All damn day.
But speaking of that, you talked about that little boat. Well, now I can't unsee it. So we got to have that one picture, because now I want to do like
Send
a
you a
glow
picture.
up boat, because you just got a new boat, right? Did you get it? You got it, right? Okay.
Yes.
And do you want to tell
Yes.
us about your new thing? Do we need to name it? We just named
It's
Sarah's truck.
It's already named.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm about 3.5, 4 weeks into this new boat. I just took it in for the 20-hour service yesterday, and back in October, um, Chris Coulter, you good? You're good. You're good. Back in October, um, well, actually, this goes back even back before that. I knew that I was going to need a new boat. I've enjoyed the shoal water. It served me and my clients very well. It's very comfortable. But I knew that the time was coming when I needed a new one. And so I went to Chris last year. It was in February, and I was in nowhere to buy a new boat. I just had told him, I said, look, this is what I want to do. This is what I want. And he said, all right, let's work towards it. And so last year in October, he introduced me to a new hull. I guess it's maybe about a year out. It's a Haney hull. It's a 25T. T stands for tunnel. And so what it is, it's very similar to a Magnum, but without the pad on the bottom. It's got a tunnel. It's a V hole, and also has a tunnel halfway through it. It is best of both worlds. So when he told me about that hole, he said, here, I'm going to let you take it in Batham. You can run it for about 2 weeks, test run it, see how you like it. And I test ran it, and I loved it. And I said, man, this is the bee's knees. Let's go ahead and I went in the next day and ordered it. And so I always like to name my boats, or I can oftentimes be a little, I don't know. I always think I'm tomboyish and kind of, I kind of,
that's why I'm here. Name
you
other
know,
people's shit. Like,
so I was thinking about a name for this boat, and I wanted to name it something morbid, Grim Reaper, or something, something real morbid. And so a friend of mine, he mentioned, why don't you name it? The Black Widow? And I was like, I like that. But why? Why? I want a reason why. And so black widows, after they're done mating, they kill their mate. And I thought, that's it. I love it. Done deal. And so, I went to Chris. And I said, Chris, I want you to build me the Black Widow. This is going to be an all black boat, little bit of red. And he said, we're going to build a Black Widow, girl. Let's do it. And so that was back in October. Well, she is she's sitting out front. I'll send you a picture of her too, but
you just stare and look at her out there and be like, hey.
I do. I can't tell you how much I stare at that boat. It's probably not even right. it is the best. It honestly, it is the best boat I've ever ridden in. It handles Baffin beautifully. It gets up shallow. It, I mean, it cuts through that water like butter. I took Mickey
Okay, how
Eastman.
fast is it running? Like,
Well, you know,
is it a little faster than that 50?
so I have a 250 on it. And I don't run fast because I'm always striving for safety. I don't run
Yeah.
fast. I run anywhere between 30 to 45,000, 4,500 RPM. And so that's like maybe 25 to 35 miles an hour at the
Yeah.
most. It can run 50 miles an hour if you want it to, but I don't, I don't do it with clients just because it's just not safe.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, I have gotten so many compliments on this boat. Like I said, I took Mickey Eastman fishing on Monday, and he paid me the nicest compliment so far. He said, "You know, I've ridden in many holes in my life, and this is the best riding hole I've ever ridden in."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh my goodness," you know. And so, um, it's been a game changer for me. You know, the Shoalwater Cat was very pleasant, but for Baffin, especially during this time of year and in the winter, when you've got that predominant southeast wind that's blowing 30 miles an hour, where I launch in the back in Coffer Park, you need something that's going to handle Baffin well. And this boat, I'm telling you, it handles it beautifully. It's been an absolute game changer. I wish I would have gotten into it a little bit sooner. But you know what? Everything happens on its own time, and it's been just an absolute pleasure riding and driving this boat. Yeah, it's named the Black Widow, and on the back of the motor on the Mercury, it's got a 250 Mercury Verado on it, and on the back of the motor, I've got an red hourglass shape on the back. It's just, I mean, I
Oh,
see when I'm driving down the road, the all the heads turning. I've seen people take pictures when they're driving by, but it is one of my obsessions. Matter of fact, see if y'all can see my fingers. I got my my thumbs painted with the Black Widow. Yeah, I'm obsessed.
I love
Totally
it.
obsessed.
Well, and what's funny is it kind of goes along with your whole mama baffin trout too, since the
Yes,
mama black widow eats her freaking
yes,
husband, man,
yes.
whatever. Wow. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it's
No, that's great. That's great.
yeah. I absolutely love this boat. It like I said, it's been a game changer completely. It's best of both worlds. Gets up shallow. You can run shallow in it, and it handles the chop just wonderfully. It is an absolute game changer.
So I know Sarah's chomping at the bit to talk to you about wind since you
Hmm.
brought it up, in this boat
Yes.
and, specifically in
Yeah.
Baffin. Um, and what I have to say before I'm going to let her ask you all the things about this, but when I first heard of Baffin, I heard about it because we were fishing Legends in Lace the first year, Sarah, remember? And we were in Port O'Connor in June catching, these trout that felt warm to the touch when you went to take
Mhm.
a hug out of them. And you get all excited because it's a 20-inch trout and you put it on the scale and it was like 1.72. And you were like,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then so we went, obviously because we had Sarah caught a huge redfish one year. Reggie, we named him, carried around all day long with us. And I remember being like, where did they get trout today? And I remember people going, they ran to Baffin. And I was like,
Mhm.
they run to Baffin from Port O'Connor. And they're like, that boat, you see that boat out there? I'm like,
Mhm.
so anyways, I had to share that because I literally never heard of Baffin, fish Baffin, none of it until that whole setup. But
Yes.
it's a magical place.
It is.
Uh, Sarah, lead off on the wind because I know that was like high on your list.
Yeah, well, because, like we follow each other on social media. So I've been, everybody knows the wind has just been insane. But I feel like last year we almost had the opposite of what's happening this year,
Mhm.
if my memory's serving me well. Like last year, the wind directions that we had for weeks and weeks and weeks blew all the water out of the bay. So everything was so shallow and muddy, and everyone was getting stuck, and nobody could even go fishing. Whereas I feel this year is the opposite. The
Mhm.
tides have been, shoot, we went
Oh,
out Monday. By the time we left in the afternoon on Monday, the tides were coming over the bulkheads, and the water was beautiful on Monday. It was down here. Or I say down here, but y'all are actually down there. My husband always makes fun of me. He's like, "Why do you say down here?" I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, down
no.
here. Like, but it's actually y'all are down there, and
Yes.
we're further up on the coast.
Up
But
there.
um,
Yes.
yeah, I'm like West Galveston ish area. So anyway, but the
We're
water
both
was,
really down there for me. Let's just say
Yes.
that.
yeah, you're up there, Lindsay, and we're down here.
Yes. I'm
Um,
way down here.
way down, you're way down there. But yeah, so but the water was beautiful Monday. Like, I mean, beautiful. Like the color of Lindsay's shirt, just so pretty green.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so windy that, like,
Yeah.
when we got out of the water and onto the boat, we almost were like blown away. And so, and all these crazy storms that keep happening. There's been a lot of thunder, a lot of lightning, a lot of wind.
Yes.
So, and I've been, reading your posts. A lot of times I feel like people scroll, but I take the time and I read, especially the guides posts, because you might be sharing some kind of information on things that you're doing to adjust to these things,
Right.
because y'all are the ones that have clients,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
gotta catch fish. So um I'm just kind of wondering. It's obviously been, gosh, it's been probably 2 months straight of wind.
Yep.
About 2 months straight. So what um what are some things that you've been doing, I guess, that are working for you, some adjustments you've made? Just tell us all about the wind and how you're running trips with that.
Sure. Well, here in Baffin, it's tough, because we have a lot of close nearby deep water. And so what that does is it creates a lot of big wakes. Um, and it seems like the further south we go, the windier it gets. And of course, this time of year, it just never ceases. It seems like it never ceases unless we get a little cold front that blows through, and then a couple days later, or the day right after, the wind kind of dies down a little bit. Then it starts to pick up. It's just background from the southeast, and it just stays predominant southeast until something else happens. But this year we've been having a lot of low pressure systems, which low pressure will naturally bring our tides up. And of course, here in Baffin, we don't have tidal movement. We have water movement, which the wind drives our water here in Baffin. And I always tell my guys, the wind is your friend here in Baffin, because what it does is it promotes activity. It promotes, movement. It promotes activity amongst, bait and trout and other fish too. And so here in Baffin, uh, more than anything, you want a little bit of wind. Now, is there such thing as too much wind? Yeah, there is. When it's gusting 40 miles an hour, it's tough. Not only is it not tough, it's not safe to go out there. I mean, I've seen boats taking on too much water. I've had to call the Coast Guard once, seeing a boat that just was out there at the mountain, usually at the mouth of Alazon in Baffin. That's when it gets the gnarliest. I mean, I've seen 5, 6 foot swells out there, and it can get western pretty quick. Um, and so what we've been doing in these windy conditions is we've been fishing shallow. We've been fishing areas where we're covered from that, where there's a little bit of blockage. And here lately, that wind's been having a lot of east in it, which can make for an awkward wade, even in the flats. You're fishing shallow to deep. You're not fishing in a pretty consistent area where the depth stays the same all the way through. And so there's certain areas where you can take advantage of the wind. You can set up yourself for a good wade with a predominant east southeast wind or straight east wind, and sometimes it's been straight east. And uh, there's areas that you can take advantage of where you can fish that, where you're covered. You find cover from that, and really and truly, that's about all you can do when it gets this windy, and when it's coming from a direction that we're not really quite used to, which, like I said, an east wind is tough to fish. It's just a tough wind to fish anywhere you are, um, and especially in Baffin.
What is
Getting
that saying? Is they're saying like
east is
when
the
the
least.
wind blows the east, the fish bite the least.
Yes, that
What do they say
east
about
is the
south?
least.
Mhm.
South,
Well,
southeast.
yes. It is very, it can be oftentimes very tough, um, when the conditions aren't consistent. And of course, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But it's not. Every day is different. And of course, one thing that I've noticed, fishing as much as I do, is watching the trend change every week. The bite, when I say trend, the bite change every week, and a lot of people know this, that I favor fishing a new moon. The, it seems like the best trout bites, the good, consistent big trout bite happens during a new moon. Now, I will say this, the biggest trout that I've ever seen was on a full moon. A full moon. It was during the major, and it was here in Baffin. And I still get chills when I talk about this, because, and luckily I had some people that were with me. I had 4 people that were with me, and one of them was close enough to hear it. He didn't see it, but he heard it. And it was actually 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, and we were fishing here in Baffin, and it was, like I said, during a full moon, and it was during the major, about 12 o'clock, right at 12 o'clock. Um, Huge slick popped up, and I had four folks with me, so 5, including myself. So we were dissecting this area pretty thoroughly. Tide was pretty low; it was high pressure. Um, some were throwing top waters, some were throwing lures. I was throwing a top water, and one of my favorite lures, one of my favorite top waters, is a she dog. It's an original mirror lure. It's she dog, and it's called Night Stalker. It's a Texas custom lure painted, uh, original mirror lure she dog. It's got pink right underneath the chin, red hooks. Um, just before I saw this trout, I had caught a 28. She came up, just slammed it. So uh, I was already experiencing some adrenaline rush, and this just happened. So we continued our way, comes up to a tabletop, kind of comes up a little shallow area. I mean, you can easily fit 8 people there if you wanted to. It's just hard packed sand, just ideal. It's just ideal structure. But anyways, throughout that top water, walking it right towards me, about maybe 15, 20 yards in front of me. I'm walking it, all of a sudden, this V wake appears right behind it, and this trout came up from my left side of that top water and sideswiped it. She came up, sideswiped it, and when I saw the girth of her, I mean, I kid you not, it was at least this wide. I mean, it was the biggest trout that I had ever seen. And when she made herself known there, I mean, whatever I was doing was enough to piss her off. I don't know why she reacted the way she did, why she didn't commit to it, why. I always ask myself, why? Why didn't she go for it? I mean, it was enough for her to follow it, stalk it, and then make a swipe at it. If she wanted it, she would have got it. Um, but anyways, when I saw that, literally chills from the tip of my head to my toes, just chills. And one of my guys was close enough to me. He said, I don't know what it was, but it sounded big. I said, It was big. It was big. It was the biggest one I've ever seen. And that still haunts me to this day. I truly believe that there is a trout that lives out there that nobody has seen, nobody has caught, nobody will probably ever touch, that just lives there. Everything's there that she needs. There's structure, bait, and bait is structure. The bait is structure when we're out there fishing an area. Everything's there that she needs to live and sustain. And I know that day when I saw that fish, that's the caliber of trout that lives in Baffin. And a lot of these trout don't have many specks on them. They look like sand trout. They have very, very few spots on them. And it's because of the structure that they live in. It's hard packed sand. There's very little grass to no grass. In the back, once you get in what I call the fingers of Baffin, which is Alizon, the Cayo, and then the Laguna Salada. Those are what I call the fingers of Baffin. It is super hyper saline water. And it's mainly mullet driven and wind driven. We have no current back there. And so during times when we're in a drought, tide is low, high barometric pressure, that shrimp will move in there. And it's usually in the summertime. And when nobody else is catching big trout, they're back there. They're where that shrimp is. And when that water temperature gets in upper 80s or 90 degrees in the summertime and in August, that all of that shrimp will migrate in there. I've seen it. I mean, I have a video, and I'm like, man, if y'all don't believe me, I've got a video of it where it shows just a defined bait line. And this is like midsummer when it's super hot. And you can just see that mullet, and you can see those shrimp just jumping out, and usually you'll have pelicans just hovering right over it. And you can bet underneath that line of bait, there they are. They're there. But it's in the summertime in Baffin, it can be stellar. Baffin can also be a very unstellar place sometimes too. In the winter, when that shrimp moves out, that bait moves out, water temperature drops, it becomes a Dead Sea. That's why I go down to Mansfield. I'm like, screw this. I'm going down to Mansfield. I'll see y'all later. But when Baffin is on and the shrimp are there and the bait's there, it's magical. It can be magical. It can be a beautiful place.
So now that we're back, I was
Yes.
going to ask you, so in these windy weeks, like I'm sure you fished already this week at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, what are suggestions for your clients that you're taking out bait wise? Like do you kind of ever make any suggestions, or do you kind of let them figure it out, do their own thing, or how do you work with that?
I always suggest what's been working for us in current conditions, which I throw a 1/16 jig head, and a lot of folks ask, man, should I throw something heavier? And I'm like, nah, you really don't need to adjust the weight of your jig head just because it's windy. Once that jig head hits the water, it's naturally going to sink. Now, of course, the wind will chalk up the water. It will make it a little bit stained, a little bit chalky. And so, we've been throwing, and of course, two of my favorite colors that I throw are Golden Brim. It's a original Mirror Lure Little John in Golden Brim or Watermelon Red Glitter. And so, Down South Lure, makes he makes it a supermodel and the Big Smooth, but it's called Root Beer Hopper, and it's got red and gold glitter in it, so it's best of both worlds. I prefer that mold, the supermodel profile, just because I just think it looks more natural. I just have a lot of confidence in that. So, and that's one thing I also stress to my clients as well, is if you've got a lure that you're confident in, that you know has produced good fish for you, that you know you can pull a bite on, by all means throw it. Don't let me hold you back. I'm going to, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you what's been working, what's been producing good bites for me. Does not mean that you have to do it. Does not mean that you have to throw it. If what you're using is working for you and what I'm using is not working for me, I'm going to throw what you're throwing. Give me one of those lures, see what, I'm all for that. And so in these windy conditions, I always wade with the wind. I never, sometimes I will angle my cast and kind of bend my cast a little bit, and then I'll work it a certain way. And a lot of folks will ask me why I work my lure a certain way. And I know Lindsay, she probably noticed me whenever I was out there fishing. I keep my rod tip straight up. I essentially dust it off bottom. You want that lure to be bouncing off bottom, especially in those potholes. Um, in grassy areas, I will work the middle column, and oftentimes in these areas we'll have rows of grass that forms from the wind. You throw in between those rows so that you're not hooking in grass every cast. And then of course, in those areas too, we have floating grass on the upper column. So that's why I always tell my guys, try to keep that lure in the middle column. And also another thing that I'll suggest to them, instead of running the hook through the top slit of that lure, hook it through the bottom, so that you're not snagging grass on the upper column, that floating grass. So you can just really work the middle column, and you won't snag, all that grass. It reduces that, which I know sometimes it can be a little frustrating having to deal with all the floating grass. And right now it's not as bad. Summertime, when it gets hot, it's going to get bad. It always does. And of course, this wind has also worked up a lot of that grass. I actually, last time I came in, it was Tuesday. I thought I was running, and there's just big, thick patches of grass. And I thought, man, I hope my motor doesn't start overheating. I've never seen so much floating grass in Baffin. And what it's coming from, because we've had that predominant east southeast wind and sometimes east wind, it pushes all that floating grass into Baffin. And so that's where all that grass is coming from. It's unnatural to see that. But that's one thing that we're having to deal with, with this win. And oftentimes it can be tough. It can be really tough. I mean, sometimes, and I always tell my guys, Baffin Bay oftentimes can be a one bite kind of bay system. You are striving for one bite. It seems like the further back you go into Baffin, the the amount of bites that you get reduce, but the big bites, you better be ready, because when one connects, it's going to be a good one. If you're looking for one big good trout bite, you might grind all day for it, but it's going to be worth it. Now you can go further out towards the mouth, out to Yarborough, Meadows area, grassy areas. You're going to get on a good trout bite. You're going to get on a good redfish bite. We've been catching flounder out closer to the mouth of Baffin, which is always good to see. But this, like I said, there's ways to approach this wind to make it in your favor, and one of those things is go into areas that provide cover from the wind, and that could be a bank, could be a high bluff, which in Baffin there's a lot of high bluffs. That's more towards in the back of Baffin, what I call the fingers of Baffin. You have a lot of those really pretty high bluffs, and with the King Ranch, really pretty shoreline. And of course, with the east southeast wind or east wind, you can get in areas tucked in where you're blocked from that. And you can make a good couple hours wade in that area and just really make the most of it. But these, here lately in these conditions, it can be a grind, but it can also be a very rewarding grind. But the wind is your friend here in Bath, and you want some wind, especially when the barometer is high. to the kiss of death here in Baffin is no wind and high barometric pressure. That is the kiss of death in Baffin. When it gets like that, I'm sorry, I'll admit it, I get discouraged. I'm like, man, oh man, this is tough. You have to pull a bite. You downsize to something smaller. Lighter colored bait if the water's clear. Man, clear water, high barometric pressure, and no wind. That is a kiss of death right there. And believe me, I fished it before. I fished it, and it is tough. It is enough to discourage you big time. But that's part of
I'm
fishing.
laughing.
It's like, yeah.
Because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm laughing because I know exactly what you're talking about. And then when you said, yeah, but then when
it's
you
not
said you
fun
have
all
to
around.
downsize, but then she says though you have to downsize your lure, and I'm like, yeah, but there's no fucking wind, so you can't even throw that shit
Yeah.
because it's so small.
It's like, go,
Backlashing.
like 2 feet in front of you.
Yeah, I know it. I know
It
it.
makes
That's
me
Yeah.
why.
mad. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm
It,
laughing at that. We've experienced too much, and then I look up and I see all these cobwebs flying on my
oh,
lure,
yes.
on my prod tip, and I'm like,
That's how you know. Yeah, that's how you know. High barometric pressure. When you see them cobwebs,
well, and
yeah,
Sweeney used
it's
to voice that. I remember him talk. He's a big pressure guy. As far as like, it's almost like that's not even worth going. It's kind of like that pressure is a
yeah, but it's
yes,
like she said, you never know when you're just gonna get. You gotta put in the grind because you never know when you're gonna get that one little tiny window where like the wind picks up or there's a little current just for a
15
second,
yes,
and boom, you get
yes.
that one bite. And if
You
you're
know,
not there, you'll never
yeah.
know.
I always, it's funny you mentioned that, and it's amazing how the wind affects us so much here in Baffin. I mean, there's been times when I'm fishing a shoreline and there's no wind, but it's during a good moon. Like it's during a good new moon. There's bait there. There's, a lot of things happening in our favor. And all of a sudden I'll see those ripples coming closer and closer and closer. That wind's picked up and it's coming. And as soon as it hits, this happened last year. I saw it and it happened. That wind hit us and all of a sudden the bite picked up. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, instantly the bite picked up as soon as that wind hit us. And what happens too is that when you get those lines, those defined lines of bait that are running in Baffin, they are wind driven too. They'll blow whenever the wind starts to pick up and it's blowing southeast, that bait will move with that southeast wind. And so here in Baffin more than anywhere else that I fished, we're fishing the conditions. We're fishing the wind, and I always jump back and forth between Baffin and Mansfield. Mansfield, it's so different. It's a little bit. I won't say it's easy. It's not easy. It's just a little bit more simpler. Baffin can be really complex. It can be real tedious. It can be complicated. It can be a struggle. Really and truly, it can be a struggle. Um, and the conditions have a lot to do with the trout bite. Um, One thing I will mention, and I've seen this is actual data, and it's from the Heavy Hitters Speckled Truth Heavy Hitters program. Chris sends out that information, to all the folks that are in that program, and I always just read it. I haven't participated in it, just because when I'm with clients and I catch a fish, I don't want to take time away from their weight or from their time with me to come and weigh my fish, and I don't do that. So, um, and of course, when we were pre-fishing for the Legends, I'm right here, and it's hard for me to pull away from that energy that I'm in. If I'm on a good bite, it's hard for me to pull away from that. So that's why I haven't really participated in it. I just kind of supported it. So here's $100. I'll support you, send me the data. I want to see it, and so the data that I've seen from this program, the majority of the fish that are being caught and released have been around a new moon. And the majority of those big trout have been caught on neither the major or the minor. So what that tells me is that those big trout eat when they want to eat. They're not on a fixed schedule. They're not feeding with all those small trout. They're not going with the trend. They are set apart from the rest of the majority of smaller, lower class fish. The
The wannabe.
slot trout. Yeah, the wannabe. There you go. I like that. They do what they want to do. They feed when they want to feed, and they feed fewer times a day, but of course, higher quantities of food, bigger baits. They're gorging themselves once or twice a day, while the smaller profile trout are eating pretty thoroughly throughout the day and during those majors and those minors. And I will say this, based on my personal experience, the majority of those big trout that I've caught have not been during the major or the minor. They have been mid-morning. They've been late in the afternoon, or I don't. I can't even remember last time I caught a trout that was before the sun came up. It was usually once the sun has already come up, late in the morning. The biggest trout that I've caught was right at 7:45 in the middle of June in Baffin during high pressure. The water temperature was 88 degrees in the morning, and it was low tide. The day before, I knew where I was going to go. I knew where there had maybe been some fish that have been, there was a lot of bait in that area, and I knew what could be there. I had been fishing pretty close to this area. It's very similar structure with similar bait, and so I had some clients with me that day, and I said, "Look, we're looking for a trophy tomorrow. We're looking for a big one tomorrow." Well, we go to this area and come in, idle in. I mean, bait's boiling. It is boiling. Ideal profile size mullet, big mullet, shrimp jumping. I mean, it was just ideal. And so I idle in and then shut her down. We drift up another 50 feet, power pull down, get out, start dissecting the area. 7:45, I'm throwing a top water. It's that black she-dog, that night stalker, my favorite. I call it the creme de la creme. That's my little nickname for it. And so I'm throwing that thing, and just before that, one of the other clients, she caught a 6-pounder. I throw that top water out there, walk it, boom. She comes up and grabs it, and I set that hook, and I'm like, man, this is heavy. This one's heavy. She comes up. She doesn't really shake her head much. She kind of stays low, kind of nosedive. At first, man, I thought, could it be a redfish, a big red? Well, finally, when I got it close enough to me, I just saw silver. And the water back there, mind you, it's pretty dirty, and at that time of year, we were in a drought, so the water was really murky. It was almost real chalky, a little bit of green, but mostly real chalky, and that's primarily hard packed sand there, so it's going to stay pretty chalky. And so I get that fish close enough to me and boga her and pull her up. She's nearly 9 pounds. And of course, the boat was so far away from me that I didn't want to walk her back to the boat. I was so worried that she may not make it. She just went through this fight. She's in water that's 88 degrees and it's 7:45 in the morning. So I didn't walk back to the boat. I kept her there. I measured her on one of the poles that we had. She was so long that it was hard for me to lift her all the way up and get a good measurement on her. Didn't pinch the tail. She was kind of bowed up. She measured at 32 inches, nearly 9 pounds in the middle of summer in Baffin. And that was my personal best. That's still my personal best to this day.
What am I doing with my life? I give up. Oh my God. I would pee myself. I would pee myself something in there.
I was shook. Believe me, I was shook. I was shook. It was the biggest trout I've ever actually had on a boga. You know, it was just seeing it in person. It looked like a sturgeon. I mean, it's a freaking sturgeon of a trout, just massive. And
Oh
I
my
thought,
God.
imagine that fish with a full belly
In the
and then a
winter.
full egg sac. Imagine that fish during that. And mind you, this was in 2023, so this was 2 years ago. I always wonder where that fish is, you know, what's she doing? Is she still alive, and where she is? Um, that was a very emotional release, you know, and luckily I was able to get it all on camera and on video, and I had a GoPro. I was wearing a GoPro that day, but I didn't have it recording. I was so shook. Yeah, I, I wish I would have had it going, but I didn't. But yeah, that was
Well,
and she didn't have
if you
many
ever
spots.
need somebody to go with you to maybe check on her or just go see if she's there or just say hey,
Just say
like
hey.
I would be willing to go in the summer for that. Like I would suck it up.
Come
My,
on,
or even
let's do it.
her little sister would be fine for me.
Yes. Yep. That trout had very few spots on her. She was very silver. You could tell that she lives back there. She lives in that structure. She lives in that sandy bottom. She didn't move far. And it's just, and I always compare it to this. And most of my clients hunt. Most of them hunt, you know, trophy bucks, and they do a lot of deer hunting. And I always tell them, like, I always ask them, do you go hunting for trophy bucks? Do you go hunting on a full moon? And the majority of those, the answer to that question is no, no. Why?
Really?
Why? I'm
Really?
like,
Then
why?
they are not
Because
real hunters.
yeah, and
You got to
usually
go
the
suffer.
answer that's right. And the answer is usually no, because when you do go out there in the morning, they're nowhere to be found. You can't, it's hard to find them. They'll feed when they want to feed. And a lot of those trophy bucks, they don't travel far. They have an area where they've got everything that they need to sustain. They've got food, they've got good structure, they've got an area where they feel safe. They don't need to go and venture out any more than what they do. I mean, they're older. They've had their routine, and they stick with it. They stick there. They don't move much, and so that's how these big trout are. That's how I believe they are. They don't move very far. They don't move unless they absolutely have to. If the tide really pulls out, our water level drops just tremendously, then of course they will probably move. But if everything's there that they need, structure, bait, you know, good water flow, which of course in Baffin we don't have water flow. Mainly when we get big rains, that's usually what kind of, you know, neutralizes the water a little bit, just a little, not very much. But when we do get those big rains, a lot of that water comes in from the San Gertrudis. It comes in the back of the Cayo. From that's like all northwest Kingsville area. Whenever you see those big black clouds up there, you can bet that water's rushing. It's rushing into Baffin. And with Baffin being such a hyper saline bay system, any fresh water that comes in, it's going to shock those fish. They're not used to it. They're used to that hypersaline water. So when we get these big rains, just like, well, let's say it was about a month and a half ago, when we had a really big rain here. We had, like, I want to say it was 8 to 10 inches in some areas. Further up north, we had a lot of rainfall, and so all that water, of course, naturally ran into Baffin. And I fished 3 days straight right after that rain, and I had some good clients with me, good fishermen, and we did not pull a big trout those 3 days, and it was during a good moon, a good moon phase, low pressure. Um, of course, water had come up because of the low pressure. We had a lot of fresh water in there, and they were out deep. We couldn't get to them. When I know the last day that we fished, I was coming in. There's a drop off that I was running parallel. They were slicking out there on that drop off. We couldn't get to them. They were out deep. They were in the lower column where all that salty water was. They weren't going to come up on that upper column. It was just too much fresh water. And so my guy, he looks at me, he says, and they're such good fishermen. They always usually catch a couple of good trout. They'll fish with me 2 or 3 days, and we'll almost always pull a good trout in the days that they come fishing. And he said, Reanna, he said, this has been the toughest 3 days of fishing I think I've ever had. And I said, I agree. It was tough. And I said, and it was because of all that rain that we had. It was a big shock when we had been in some pretty consistent patterns. The water was pretty consistent. It was very salty. We didn't have a whole lot of rain since the year before in like summertime, going into dove season. We always get a lot of rain, and so all that rain in such a short amount of time, it it shocked the water. It shocked the fish too. I mean, it was just like, it was just like, man, they all went out deep, and of course where they were, we couldn't wade to them. It was just not possible unless you were fishing by boat, dropping it on bottom, and I'm sure you could have pulled some good trout, but that's just not what we do. So, it was that's just part of the game. That's just part of trout fishing. It's part of moving with the conditions and what's given to us and what's handed to us. And of course, sometimes you just never know what's going to be handed to you when you're out here fishing. And uh, further down south, they got hit even harder than we did. I know it was devastating down the Arroyo, Port Mansfield area. I think in the Arroyo they got, like, I heard, anywhere between 25 to 30 inches of rain within like a 24 to 48-hour period. That is a detrimental amount of fresh water in that short of a time. Of course, tides were high, and they're right there. I mean, they're right there by the East Cut. So low barometric pressure is already bringing in higher tides, and then of course that rain, in which that area, uh, we had gotten a lot of rain over there all through summer and then going into dove season. So all that area was already pretty saturated already. And then all that water comes in. Where does it go? Where is it going to go? It's tough. It's I've seen it happen. Saw it happen with them, and of course with us. Luckily, we were a little bit more drier up here, so a lot of that, and we have sandy loam. So sandy loam, it's when you get that much amount of water, it just kind of just runs right off of it. It doesn't really saturate real quickly. It kind of just rolls off. When you get a good, slow, steady rain, it's good for that sandy loam. That's what we have all around here in the yard and whatnot. Sandy loam. You pour a cup of water over it, it'll just bead right off. And so all that water in that short of period of time just runs off. It runs off into our estuaries, and I favor areas where there is runoff. I favor estuaries. I favor fishing structure where you can, you have a little inlet to a back lake, or there's bait that's stored back up in there. When that tide fluctuates, they tend to move in and out of there. And yes, yeah, little estuaries, and of course it's not an actual pinpoint where there's saltwater and freshwater right there. No, it's just it's a little point where redfish and trout can ambush these smaller profile bait that are coming and going, and you get right in there. And here lately, I've been throwing double D's a lot, which is suspending twitch bait. I love banging a little double D in an area where you can actually get away with it and do it pretty thoroughly. we're not getting snagged up on grass every cast. I can't stand that. When you pull it in, you got a big old line of thick grass. You got to pull it off
Like
every time.
whipping it.
Yeah, I'm just whipping it off, and I don't like to do that. If it's real windy, you can get away.
That is fucked up. Sorry, Sarah's like making fun of my feet.
We're
I'm
having
back,
a
y'all.
side conversation about fishing reels, actually.
Literally
And
went from I'm getting a new reel, like I'm literally watching the UPS to see if this reel shows up. Like it's supposed to be here anytime. And
What reel did you get?
I got that the Lose Custom Pro. You see the gold one?
The black and gold one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger.
No, well, maybe we're not talking about the same. No, this actually is probably all gold. So because it actually has the low profile.
Yeah, that new one.
Yeah, and it's been sold out. But I've been doing like homework. Like I don't need another reel. Let's just be honest. But I like shiny shit. So
yeah.
anyways, I got
you
the
can
line
buy me another
put it on
reel.
tonight. But it's supposed to. We'll see. I watched all the YouTube videos and they say that this is real. It's supposed to like basically be like kind of like that one reel. Is it Daiwa? I don't even know how you call them that.
Daiwa.
There we go. That the no backlash, and so but in any wind condition. So we'll see.
We'll see.
You should have
We'll
just
see about
bought
that.
me one.
We'll see about that.
We'll see about
I
that.
figure we'll give it a go. But anyways, so
yeah.
that went because she was like, I love my Lose. I was like, I like my custom light too because it's like fits in the paw. It's really small.
Yeah, I haven't found anything like that small. Like my hands are small, so I need like a small reel.
So I was like, I have actually big hands, and she's like, yeah, because you have like big feet. I'm like, and she's like, what's next to you? I was like, Saskatchewan, Sasquatch,
Saskatchewan.
And she's like, and they're like a size 13. I'm like, no, like 10.
Well, shit, I wear like a size 7. My feet are smaller.
Okay, keep it up.
My hands are small.
Keep it up.
So anyway, well, we were going to tell you, we're at like 2 full hours. So, and we're recording, but I'm going to cut out your phone dying. So no problem.
Yes,
but we really just, I know we covered this already, and we really just want to thank you for taking time to come on today, because we know that like you probably don't get a ton of days off with being on the water every day. And so like, we're super appreciative that you took some time to do this with us, because when we started this podcast initially, I don't know if, you've watched or listened to any of them, but we, I've kind of been consistently fishing throughout my life, of course, going through things like what you did, going through college and me having children and coming back into it now that my kids are a little bit older and I have a little bit more free time to do it. It's obviously like our passion. And so Lindsay's a little bit more newer into the game. And so when we started this and we talked about it, it was primarily that we just wanted to put everything out there on the table and just say, like, no one is really a professional, right? Like, we're all learning and growing every day, and we're learning from each other. And that's why we wanted to do this, is to have people like you on that are maybe on the water more, or on the water every day, people we could talk to, learn from, so that everyone else could also learn a little something. And because there's, like you said, and we've talked about, there's ladies out there that are doing this, but there's not a lot. And I think there's something to be said about those of us that have a passion for this in it. And we would love to come together more as a female community. And I really loved what you were saying, or what we saw on your social media about the ladies group that you and Kim put together.
Yes,
and
Kim
so
Golden.
Yes, and so if you could just real quick, I kind of wanted to touch base just on that before we close. So that way, if there's any ladies that are listening to this and they want more information on how to get in contact with you and how to book something like that and what they get out of it, if you would just tell us about that, and then we'll call it a show and leave our listeners with some really good information.
Sure thing. Yeah, so that was our first annual Baffin Bay Ladies Spring Retreat. We are planning on having another one next year. It was a complete success this year. Uh, me and Kim were equally as excited as our ladies were for this event. Luckily, we had some amazing sponsors as far as the swag bags for them. So these were products that we gave to these ladies that not only that to use during the trip, but were products that we use ourselves to help make the process a little bit easier, more effective for us when we're waiting. But the whole point of this retreat was so that we could help other lady anglers improve on their trout fishing skills, and also to kind of have a self pampering, just kind of spoil yourself type event, 3 days of fishing where you don't have to worry about anything. We supplied it for you. You just bring your rods and reels and the clothes on your back, and the rest we have covered. And so we wanted to make this event very special. And like I said, Kim and I, we think pretty similarly in how we do business and how we run our business. If we're going to do something, we're going to go all out. We're gonna put everything into this, and try to make it the best experience for everybody. And so we kicked off the event with dinner, of course, and a seminar for the ladies that just touched base with the next 3 days that we were going to be fishing. So, we covered the structure that we were going to be fishing, the weather, what we had been using, what's been working, what to expect. And so that kind of prepared the ladies going into the following 3 days, which the weather was tough. We had a cold front that blew in late Friday night, early Saturday morning. So we waited that out. We fished late. We fished late Saturday afternoon, which of course it's always weird having to wait in the morning and fish in the afternoon, and you have that anticipation all morning. It throws me off. As a guide, it throws me off because I'm so used to being out there early in the morning, wait early, you're in by 3 o'clock, 2:33. Well, we were just getting started at, we met at 11, so we fished late in the afternoon. But the camaraderie that happened, the relationships that were built, it was priceless. And that was the whole point of this, to, have all these ladies kind of feed off of each other, and the amount of good energy that was radiated in this event, it was just wonderful. And then I thought it was quite special that it was literally all ladies, from the chef to the guides, all ladies. So that was, for Kim and I, it was very special. It was, I thought if we have a male chef, it kind of ruins that dynamic. They're there in the house. They're, in their comfortable clothes, no makeup. We want them to feel comfortable. And so having Chef Amber, she was wonderful, very talented, just great energy. She was able to provide some fantastic meals for the ladies all 3 days, appetizers, lunch on the boat. So we are planning on having another one next year. We don't know if we're going to be Baffin or Mansfield. We might have one. I'd like to have one every quarter. Spring, summer, fall, winter type deal. That's ultimately the goal that we're striving for. But we wanted to see how this one played out, and of course, it played out wonderfully. Um, Made some new friends, got to make some new friends, see some old faces, and so it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it very much. A lot of the ladies didn't want it to end. So that tells you the amount of enjoyment and how much fun it was for these ladies. So we are planning on having another one next year
So
for sure.
Yay.
if women want to get ahead of the game, and I mean, obviously, I feel like it's probably like there's limited spots. I mean,
Of course,
you know, people
yes,
can't do it. Otherwise, it kind of takes away from the vibe. But
right.
can they reach out to you now and just say, you know, hey, let me know, you know,
Absolutely.
I'm interested, or reach out to Kim Golden and find out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely initiate that. You know, folks can contact me at my phone number 361-296-5400. I'd like to start a almost kind of like a waiting list
Mhm.
for this event. And of course, you know, we we welcome anglers of all levels, whether you are starting out and you want to improve your skills, your angling skills, you want to hone in on trophy trout fishing. Don't feel embarrassed or, you know, like, am I good enough? You know, that's always the question. Am I good enough? Yes, you are. That this is a start um, to another level. This is where you can level up your game. Is an event such as this one here. So it was it was a complete success. I was equally as excited about it as these ladies were. I thought, man, if you know, if I saw a goodie bag like that sitting at the table for me, I'd get all giddy about it too. We were able to provide some beautiful swag bags for these ladies, and like I said, all the products that were in there were things that we use, things that we have been using. We also gave them like, you know, some fuzzy socks and little like face masks, stuff for self care while they were there. You
Yeah.
know, just to kind of enjoy their stay and you know, have some time off because you know I know most of the ladies are mothers, most of them work, most of them you know have maybe stressful jobs or just want to get away and this was that opportunity. So it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. I was very glad to be able to put that together for these ladies. It was a complete honor.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. We'd love to be a part of that at some point. So me and Lindsay will have to look at those dates and see if we can do
Yes,
that work. I know.
absolutely.
Well, and I,
All you had to say was chef, and I'm like, girl, I'm hungry right now.
yeah,
I'm ready to go.
you had
Me.
good food. I will say the other thing that I just add to that is, I mean, obviously, like Sarah said, you know, like Sarah and I are Sarah's really good, you know, like on the water. And, you know, I feel like I get stronger every time I go out, and I'm always trying to like find new ways to learn different techniques and ability, you know,
Right,
improving. If you're not constantly improving, it's like, what are you doing? You know, so
right.
I feel like the more that I've done it and the more I've been exposed, especially like the more tournaments we've done and things like that, I almost kind of wish sometimes that like some people would just remember like you don't have to present yourself a certain way. It's okay if you're not good at something. Like
Right,
it's okay.
right,
There's a whole
right.
culture and a whole community here that is not going to judge you. If anything,
Right.
they're here to help you. And so like I feel like sometimes they're they hold themselves back because
Hmm.
they want to present this persona, and instead of just saying, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I want to
Yeah.
learn how to do that. And
Right.
I feel like
Right.
that space that you're creating kind of, you want that person that's not going into it like, well, I can do this and I can do, you know, you want the
Hmm.
person that actually wants to just be like, I don't know shit. Talk to me like I don't know anything, because I want to
Right.
be the best person. I want to be the best angler I can be.
Right.
And next year I want to be better than that person I was last year.
Yes.
So
And that's the whole goal with an event such as this one. You know, I always tell people there's no judging on my boat. When you get on my boat, whatever you say here stays here. If that's how you want it to be. I don't judge. You are safe on my boat. And I always say there's no wrong question. there is no wrong question. If you think it's a stupid question, it probably isn't. It's probably a good question, and it's probably questions that a lot of other ladies here have too as well. And so, during our seminar, we at the end we opened it up to questions, and a lot of the ladies didn't have questions. Some did, and of course, I always tell them, look, if there's something that you're not sure about, something that, you might be embarrassed about, you can always come to me directly and ask me. There's no need to feel embarrassed or, ashamed or whatever. This is a learning experience. This is a learning experience for me every day. I'm learning every time I go out there. It's all part of growing and becoming better. And so, this event is a perfect place for that to happen. Creating a safe environment for all these ladies where they can be themselves. They can come in with, however, come as you are, basically. Come as you are.
I just
And
started singing the song in my head.
yes.
It's like I'm an 8th grade choir at church.
Yes. Yes. Yep. You bring everything the way it is, and we will go from there.
We're just gonna lay it all at Reanna's feet.
Yep.
Right.
Just lay it all there,
And not
we'll work with it.
feet.
Size 13.
Yeah. Size 9.5 wide here.
Oh Lord.
One thing that I didn't talk a whole lot about was tournament fishing.
I told Sarah whenever we lost you earlier, I was like, we should have.
Yes.
I was like, I think she's pretty much like she's really shared like without us having to, like I said. But I think the only thing we haven't talked about was like tournament stuff because like
Yes.
there's a lot going on here with like
Absolutely.
you especially lately. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Congratulations on the fish at Legends. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that was pretty emotional for me. To be able to do it on tournament day is one thing. To do it out there on your own when you're just fishing on your own, you've got clients, it's different. But during a tournament, to be able to do it on tournament day, to be able to do it on tournament day 2 days in a row, that's even tougher. The first tournament I ever fished was the Saltwater Legends series, and that was last year, the Corpus Christi one. Then, of course, the next one was the one in Port Mansfield. That one was the first day we were standing in third place. I believe we were 5 ounces away from the lead on day one. And on day 2, a cold front blew in. It was a pretty massive one, pretty big one. It blew out the bay, and it was tough. Still pulled in some fish. We ended up 7th place in that one, and I believe there were 53 teams in that one. But I mean, it's just proof that it happens. The conditions, they can get gnarly, and it can change up the whole dynamic pretty quick. So those were my first official tournaments that I've ever fished in. And
crazy.
Like I said, I always say, if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go all in.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go all out. I'm not going to fish little kiddie pole tournaments, and try to go win locally. No, I want to go all out or go home. And so, and that goes back to my golf background, the competitive nature. I love it. I dig it. That's just my deal. I'm competitive at nature, so I crave it. And so, I hadn't planned on fishing the Legends in Lace, but Chris Coulter, he asked me. He said, "Would you consider fishing with Julie?" And I said, "Sure, you got me." He said, "We'll pay for your entry." I said, "Say no more. You got me. You got me." And so,
we could get our intro. I'm just kidding.
come on, Chris. Come in clutch, man.
Well, because that's half of the battle, right? When it comes to these tournaments, like it can be pricey to get into a lot of these tournaments. And so that's something that I think a lot of ladies struggle with too. Because like some of us, it's not that we question our fishing abilities. It's like, damn, do we really want to go drop all that and then potentially lose it all in one weekend too?
Yeah.
Like you might not
Yes.
get it back.
Yes.
But that's the
And
game you play when you're out there fishing. That's just what it
right.
is. Could be your
Of
lucky
course.
day.
Well, and we're kind of like
Mhm.
you, and I mean, I would say we're a lot like you. Sarah and I are both super competitive, and we've talked about
Mhm.
because we did the Legends and Lace like the first 2 years that Chad did it, and yeah, it was Port O'Connor was just a beating, and that's before he did the 2 stops for the women, and
Right.
um, we both have talked about it, but it's like if we're gonna do it, we're not just gonna do one. We want to do
Right.
jobs. Obviously,
Right.
that's where you really see the. I feel like that's where the rubber meets the road, and it's
Absolutely.
like with it being in Port O'Connor, and then it's like Sarah and I don't operate a boat. She has a boat. Would I trust Sarah and I to operate that? Absolutely not. But we kind of started feeling like maybe if they change the location, if they'll change the second stop at Port O'Connor, right? But I don't know. We just kind of hawed around about it. Now we're still kind of like, so.
Yeah, because that's the other thing too that comes into play is not only the expense of it, but the boat itself. Because yeah, sure,
It's a
I have a boat, but can my boat get me to where those big fish are? Probably not.
Port O'Connor,
Yeah.
unless you hit the jet. And if
Well,
you
let me
Unless
hit the
it's
tell
jet,
our
you
lucky day.
we may not be there either.
you know,
But
certain areas like the one in Mansfield. We had I was running my boat. I had a 250. There was twin 400s in that harbor. Twin 300s, and here I come just tootling around with my 250. And I'll tell you, you don't have to run very far in Mansfield to find them. And a lot of folks ran to Baffin. A lot of folks ran to East Matagorda and far, and then I just run right out there and pull them in. And like, you don't need a fast boat oftentimes. I mean, it's nice to have it. It's nice to be able to, run all the way down to Port Mansfield from Port O'Connor, but man, that's taken away from fishing time. And I always say
Fishing time.
maximize your fishing time and minimize your run time. And that's the whole point. And so, of course, it took it. I always say it takes 2 good songs to get where I wanted to get in Port Mansfield. 2 good songs to get there, and fished all day. One of my teammates pulled in a seven plus pounder right at, I think it was like 3:30 in the afternoon, and that put us up there. We had a 7 pound red, and I mean it was enough to do it. But if we had been running during that time, we wouldn't have caught that. We wouldn't have had that opportunity. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to be a team on Team Haney this year for the Legends and Lace with Chris, and he's got that 25 Magnum with I don't know, it's like a 400 on it. It runs fast. It gets up pretty fast, and I knew where we had been catching them. I had been fishing clients for the last 2 weeks in this one area that was holding fish. It was holding bait. It had scattered sand pockets. It was holding just beautiful amounts of ideal profile size mullet. They were shrimp. There's been shrimp there too. So, the last week before the Legends, we pull a couple of sevens, couple of sixes. I'm like, this is all we need. It's here. They're mixed in. They're here. Um, and solid fish, and they were all fat. They're all hefty. They all had full bellies. You'd catch a couple of males, and then all of a sudden there's that female mixed in there with them. And so I told Chris, I said, we need to go over there. That's where we can go there, fish there all day long. Don't have to move. We can idle back around, make that wade through again. It can happen there, and sure enough, it did.
well, are you going to fish Port O'Connor?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna fish the next one too.
Yeah.
I'll fish it with them. But that day, it was that kind of excuse me, it was that kind of a day where it was just like a one bite kind of a day. You're looking for one bite.
Mhm.
And we were all pretty much spread out, just fishing different depths, different, areas, just trying to take advantage of that whole area. Uh, I'm throwing root beer hopper and down south supermodel. I kept that lure, of course. I didn't want to get rid of it. And she thumps it. I mean, like a freight train thumps it. And I set that hook low. Of course, Chris is pretty far away from me. I mean, he is a long ways away from me in the boat. And there's some folks spread around. There's a couple boats there, and I'm like, man, I'm going to have to start yelling to get him over here. It was like 10, 15 minutes before he idled over there to me. I was worried about that fish, being in that net. And so I just kind of kept her upright and where she was getting good water flow through her gills. And I was so worked up when that fish hit and I set that hook. At first, I didn't realize how big it was. And I set that hook, and then I realized how heavy she was, and then she came up. And I didn't want that fish to come up. When she came up, the amount of adrenaline that rushed through me was enough to paralyze an elephant. I mean, it was just like, okay, we better gain control of this fish because it's a good one. And I saw that yellowmouth come up and said, that's it right there. And so I got her, and then I pulled her up. I pulled her straight toward me, and I netted her real quick. I said, "You get in that net," and I just got froze right there. I said, "Oh my gosh, this
Get in
is
there, bitch.
this is it." So I know I netted her so freaking fast.
And then you're like,
I mean, I
I'm
never,
sorry, baby. I didn't mean to talk to you that way. I'm gonna
I,
let you
I
go.
never, I've never wanted to net a fish so bad in my life. I've never wanted her in that net so bad. And when I netted her, I just about stopped and I just let my shoulders down and I breathe. I was just like, breathe, just breathe. You got her. She's yours. And sure enough, Chris, he heard me and the wind was howling out of it, almost like east southeast. And so the wind was against me, and I was trying to yell at him. He had to have been at least 1,000 to 1,500 yards away. It was a good, it was a long, I was waving my arms, everything. Finally, he came over there, and he was just about as excited as I was. I said, this one is, yeah, this is a good one. I said, she's definitely every bit of 7. And of course, put her on the boga, did the whole video, and she was 725, and that was the one. She was good enough for that day. She
Saw
just
it. I saw your video and I commented, when I saw it, I mean, because I, of course, was watching, just, waiting and see, and I could tell, I felt like the bite was early. The one bite
yes,
came fairly early for most people because you didn't really see a lot of action after lunch.
no,
But I remember seeing yours, and as soon as I saw it, I didn't even see this. I didn't even read how much it weighed. I was like, yes, yes. I was so excited for
yeah.
you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was just I can't even explain the feeling. When it happens when you're on your own, it is exciting. But when it happens on tournament day, it's different.
Yeah.
It hits different. It hits different because that's when you need it the most. And one thing that I will say during this tournament, I know the last tournament that I fished in Mansfield, one day I zeroed out, and the rest of the girls did very well. They did well, and they needed me to pull one in, and I didn't. All week long, we had been pulling them in the same area, in the same structure, and that day it didn't happen for me. And so what I did, which I shouldn't have, is I fished overly hard.
Mhm.
I was, that energy flows through that line, and they can tell. They can tell. Well, I was fishing too hard, and it didn't happen for. I had one that bowled up. She came up on the upper column, and she bowled up on it, and I missed her. She didn't miss it. I missed her. I missed the opportunity. And that's just how it goes. So this time around, whenever after I had caught that 725, I knew what needed to be done. I knew what needed to be caught. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to fish naturally, how I know works, how I know produces a good fish. So, and I have a very particular way in how I work my lure. You know, I kind of lift my hands up. It's right here. It's just a real subtle, just very rhythmic little twitch. And I switched lures several times, um, thinking that maybe a specific color, specific profile might just promote a bite. Well, I switched over to a down south big smooth, and it's a plum. I don't know the exact name for it, but it's like a plum color. Matter of fact, it's right here. It's this one here, big smooth in this color. I
Mm-hmm.
switched. I switched to this one. This is the same exact lure that I caught that fish on. Um, Chris was idling to me. This was my last cast of the day at 3:15. We had a 30-minute boat ride back in, 25-minute ride. Last cast. I threw that lure and I caught a 3 something, and it was enough to get us in third place. He was idling to me, and I said, I had her in the net. I said, come over here, get this video, and we're going. This is it. And that was enough. That was enough to get us in third. We just needed one more bite. We needed one more bite, and it didn't happen. We all worked hard. We grinded. It was a grind. They were there. I know they were there. They just didn't want to play. You had to just jiggle it the right way, right in front of them. And it was that kind of a day. It was overcast, blowing out of the east southeast, at 20 miles an hour, sustained. It was that kind of a day. And two good bites was enough to get us in third. And that's all it took. A good trout and a 3 something, and that was it. Julie had caught a very nice red. It was over 7 pounds, and when she hooked on, that was like one of the only reds we caught. I think we caught total like maybe 3 reds, but that area holds pretty good redfish. And when she hooked up to us, I said, "Oh, that's a good red." It was like 27 and a quarter, and just over 7 pounds. I said, "That's it, Julie." I said, "Let's close this thing out. Come on, let's do it." We could have. They ought to be glad we didn't catch that third fish, because we would have been up there. We would have taken it home. But it's tournament fishing. That's how it goes. I wish it would have all came together, but I'm very fortunate for the bites that we did get. And the bites that we did get were tough. It was hard to get them. Mm-hmm. It was just that kind of a day. But that's what makes tournament fishing so rewarding and also just very tough. But I just strive for that competitive nature, that competitive energy, and being in that competitive energy, it's just, I crave it. And whenever I know that it's time to do something, I go all out. I'm just like, I know what needs to be done, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to get it done. No matter what it takes, I'm going to strive to get it done. And during tournament days like that, it's really and truly, oftentimes it can all be right here. Right there is the hardest part of it. And I used to always say, in golf, the hardest hole ever was 5 inches, and it was right here between these 2 points. That was the hardest hole that I ever played, was in my head.
Yep.
And before before tournament, I'm not up late. And I don't drink. I'm not partying, or I'm in bed. I'm watching motivational videos. I'm just trying to prepare myself. Yeah, getting all the energy right, and
Mm-hmm.
there's little things that I do to prepare myself. And there's this one guy that I always watch on TikTok. I think he's an ex-Marine, and he's like one of the strongest men in the world. His name's David Goggins, and I love listening to this guy. Oh my goodness, he motivates the heck out of me. And I was watching his videos the night before the Legends and Lace. I'm like, I'm not a bitch. I'm not a bitch. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to grind. David Goggins says, "Don't be a bitch. I'm not going to be a bitch." And so
Yeah, you need to get his book. He has a book. You can read his
I
book.
need to get it.
It's
Yes, I
good.
need to get it.
And he's
He
got all the cuss words in the book too, because he sells it without the cuss words, and then he sells it with the cuss words. And so you got to get the one with the cuss words because it
the
just
uncensored.
makes you feel that much better.
I'm about to get the uncensored version of his
The
book.
uncensored. There you go.
I love listening to that dude. When I go work out, because I go to the gym, when I'm not fishing, I try to stay fit and healthy and prioritize my health. And when I go to the gym, I'll put his videos on and I'll listen to it while I'm working out. And so it helps motivate me. I mean, whatever it takes to
Yep.
motivate you, do
Yep.
it. And right before the tournament day, there's this one video that I particularly love. It's an old video of Tiger Woods, and it was like in 1997, and he's getting interviewed by this guy, and he's going into his first tournament, like his first pro tournament, and the guy asks him, what are your plans? He said, well, if I can just continue playing the way I have the last 3 days, then I foresee a victory. And the guy asked him, a victory? And he's like, mm-hmm. He said, well, that kind of comes off as harsh or brash. You're coming into your first tournament and you saying, I can win. He's like, well, I don't, and Tiger Woods says back, I don't see a need of going into a tournament if I'm not going there to win. And so it fast forward a couple of years after he's won all these tournaments and won them by a long shot. And he's sitting back with that same guy talking to him in an interview. And he was like, you know what? I have learned something. You're better than what I thought you'd be. Because at the end of that first interview, he says, "You'll learn." He says that to Tiger. "You'll learn," just like that. Well, guess what? And he's later on that interview says, I have learned something. You're better than what I thought you were. And that video motivates the absolute heck out of me. I'll go back to that video and revisit it all the time. I'm like, oh, that's just so. If that doesn't get you going, I don't know what does. But it's little things that I kind of dive into that help me before these tournaments, and it's watching that. I don't try to dive into negative bullshit, or talk about stuff that's just, it's not going to benefit me. If it's not going to benefit me, then I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to, because when I'm totally obsessed with this. I'm totally
No,
in tune with this.
Not at all. Not at all.
never would have
you know, yeah, and so I oftentimes say, get used to being misunderstood and being talked about and being, she's just loony, she's too into it. Yeah, well, I am into it. I mean, this is something that I am just overly probably overly obsessed about. I mean, it has, it's funny because whenever you put all that energy into something, into improving yourself, it's funny how you realize how lonely it is, how that circle of people starts to get smaller and smaller. Um, it has ruined relationships for me. It has ruined potential relationships. It's why I'm divorced. Really and truly, it's why I'm divorced. That and other reasons. But this obsession to become the best that I can be at what I do has it has shrunk my circle. I mean, if you're not gonna support me, or you're not gonna support this that I'm doing, and I don't need you. If you're not gonna help me or anything, then I don't need you in my life. And it's bittersweet.
The Black Widow.
I'm telling you, Black Widow.
I fear that bitch.
Yep.
This year
She when
Kool-Aid.
it's a lethal bite.
Oh, new branding phrase.
She don't leave no crumbs. She eats and leaves no crumbs.
Damn.
Oh my God. Well, I can't think of the end.
On that note,
I was just gonna
On
say,
that note,
that's the end all right there.
that's the
Yep.
end all right there.
Oh.
I think that's
Oh,
no crumbs left behind.
no crumbs left behind.
no.
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic.
Lindsay,
Bye, bitch. Sorry.
you know what? I'm like blown away. Like I have nothing else. Like you have covered everything. No crumbs left behind. Like I am satisfied with this podcast episode
Like, I'm
on
hungry and I want to go fishing at the same time.
Me too.
hungry, want to go fishing.
Let's go.
So
I'm hooked up to my boat. Y'all come on down. Let's go.
yeah, we'll just be there in about four and a half hours.
7.
Oh, for Lindsay 7. It takes me about 4.5 hours.
So it would be tomorrow.
Tomorrow, but we will have to come down sometime and do that. I know I'd love to meet you in person and get a ride on the Black Widow.
Yes.
And
Come
leave no crumbs behind. So I feel that.
I love it.
But thank you so much for joining us today. We always like to say thanks for going titty deep with us, because I know that's not your style. You like to stay shallow, but
I do.
But
whatever it takes.
Tournament season, in the tournament, some tournaments we've had to go there, and it's what it is. So that's where our name came from. But we thank you again, Lindsay. You got any last words?
No, I'm super glad that you took me up whenever I reached out about it, and I'm glad that you were our first guest from our little guest hiatus. So
thank y'all for having me.
I am excited to be you again, and I'm going to figure that out. So yeah, let's do it. That's all I got.
Thank y'all for having me again. It was a blast bullshitting with y'all and talking about fishing and everything else. It was fun. Thank y'all again.
Now we have some new catchphrases. Literally, like we're gonna label this episode, I think now, "No Crumbs Left Behind."
Yeah,
I like that. I really do like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I think that's it.
Forget, we want to see a picture of the boat. The
old one and the new one.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'll send y'all some pictures.
I gotta think of
all right. Well,
that to that. It's like a garden spider goes to a black widow. It's like how does
for real
from the garden. Now, sorry, I can't. Now we're here.
Well, Reanna, it has been such a pleasure to have you on, and we're going to close out this podcast. I think we've kind of been over everything, but if you want to do a quick repeat of, we talked about your Instagram handle, your name, how people can find you, your phone number, and get in touch with you. We'd like to Mama Baff and Trout.
Mama Baff and Trout.
Yep. And so